I want us to think today about wisdom and the fact that around us there is so much wisdom. It seems that we live in a world where everyone has an opinion. I saw this on someone's Facebook feed the other day. Just picture the scene at the end of a BBC news programme as they've been talking about the news, and then the news reporter says, and I have to go over to Ian because my button's not working. And again, next slide. Now let's head over to our experts on Facebook. We just seem to be full of wisdom and people's wisdom all around us. And I want us to think today, who do you listen to? Who do you allow to speak wisdom into you? Today's passage is a bit of a side story in the journey of Israel. We have a time where we actually focus a little bit more on Moses and his family situation. And it's a story that's ideal for a leadership seminar, but that's not what we're doing today. But I want to look at three things. I want to look at wisdom shared, I want to look at wisdom heard, and I want to look at wisdom applied. So we're going to get into the passage. So Ian, if you can jump me on to the start of the Bible reading. Fantastic. Let's read from Exodus 18, the first part. Moses' father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian, heard about everything God had done for Moses and his people, the Israelites. He heard especially about how the Lord had rescued them from Egypt. Earlier, Moses had sent his wife Zipporah and his 2 sons back to Jethro, who had taken them in. We're not sure when that was. It was probably when the 10 plagues were hitting Egypt. Moses was concerned for his family, sent them away. But he's been so busy, he's not had a chance to go back and collect them. Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, now came to visit Moses in the wilderness. He brought Moses' wife and 2 sons with him, and they arrived while Moses and the people were camped near the mountain of God. Jethro had sent a message to Moses saying, I, Jethro, your father-in-law, are coming to see you with your wife and your 2 sons. So Moses went out to meet his father-in-law. He bowed low and kissed him. They asked about each other's welfare and then went into Moses' tent. Moses told his father-in-law everything the Lord had done to Pharaoh and Egypt on behalf of Israel. He also told them all about the hardships they had experienced along the way and how the Lord had rescued his people from all their troubles. Jethro was delighted when he heard about all the good things the Lord had done for Israel as he rescued them from the hand of the Egyptians. So I want to look quickly at 2 things, and then I want to spend a bit more time on the third section as we apply this wisdom. So first of all, wisdom shared. What gave Jethro the right to share the wisdom? What gave him the right to go and speak to Moses, the wisdom that we'll hear about in a moment? And I think the first one is it's out of relationship. Can I say that before you talk together, walk together? Walk in each other's shoes, understand each other before you start to speak into someone's life. Moses has spent, we think, about 40 years with Jethro, serving Jethro and looking after his flock, living in his household, being and seeing him. There was a relationship that Jethro could speak out of. And this relationship led to honor. I think the way Moses goes and greets his father-in-law is more than just the cultural norm of the time. He went out and he bowed down, kissed his feet. He honored him. There was respect there. And then thirdly, what I see is in Jethro, he overflows with celebration as he hears about Moses' success. I think that's a real sign that you've got a right to speak into someone's life, when you're willing to celebrate their successes no matter what you're going through. And you are glad for what is happening to them. That means you've got their best heart and their best interest at mind. I know I've got leaders, church leaders around me, friends, who will celebrate our successes as a church even if they're going through really difficult times. Because they are cheering us on, they're cheering me on, and they are celebrating success. And I think that's 3 things that allowed Jethro to share the wisdom, But what about the wisdom heard? So let's carry on in our reading. Let's move on to the next part. The next day Moses took his seat to hear the people's dispute against each other. They waited before him from morning till evening. When Moses' father-in-law saw all that Moses was doing for the people, he asked, what are you really accomplishing here? Why are you trying to do all this alone while everyone stands around you from morning till evening? Moses replied, because the people come to me to get a ruling from God. When a dispute arises, they come to me, and I am the one who settles the case between the quarrelling parties. I inform the people of God's decrees and give them his instructions. This is not good, Moses' father-in-law exclaimed. You're going to wear yourself out, and the people too. This job is too heavy a burden for you to handle all by yourself. Now listen to me, and let me give you a word of advice, and may God be with you. You should continue to be the people's representative before God, bringing their disputes to him. Teach them God's decrees and give them his instructions. Show them how to conduct their lives. But select from all the people some capable, honest men who fear God and hate bribes. Appoint them as leaders over groups of 1,000, 150, and 10. They should always be available to solve the people's common disputes. But have them bring the major cases to you. Let the leaders decide the small matter themselves. They will help you carry the load, making the task easier for you. If you follow this advice, and if God commands you to do so, then you will be able to endure the pressures, and all these people will go home in peace. And Moses listened to his father-in-law's advice and followed his suggestions. I would imagine Moses had a lot of voices that were speaking into him. Probably 2 million voices as the Israelites. And as we heard last week, they grumbled as they had no water. They grumbled about their conditions. A lot of voices coming in. In a world of noise, we need to have selective hearing. We need to choose what we listen to and what we then apply and who we hear, and we need to learn for other things just to brush them off and say, I'm not listening to that. And I think Moses shows that ability to listen to Jethro but not to be weighed down by the 2 million grumbles. For me, I have this thing called circles of influence, which I think I may have talked about before, but these are imaginary circles in my life of where I place people as to who I might allow to speak into me. And in some respects, people are in those circles to influence me in 3 ways. One, out of authority. So God's in there. He's got the right to speak into me. He has that authority. But also the prophetic. I will listen to the prophetic word as I hear God speaking to me through that. And authority through leaders, those in authority over us, in our workplaces, our bosses, for me, the trustees and the leadership team. I give authority to speak into me. And then we have some who are in there because of relationship. Our spouse and our family should be in there. They should have the right to speak into us. And our close friends, those we've chosen to walk with, who we give permission to speak and to speak into our life. And then thirdly, there may be people in there out of experience, people who are ahead of us on the journey, people who we respect, mentors or advisors who we allow to speak into us. We need to make sure we have selective hearing when there is so much noise coming in. And I see Moses doing that. So I now want to flip onto the third part, the wisdom applied. And think about that for a little bit. What does that mean? The Bible is wisdom. And in some respect, this passage has one meaning. The Bible has one meaning. It has a context that it sits in. But then what God does through his Holy Spirit is he takes that passage and he applies it into many situations, many applications. It might be that God is speaking to you about your work situation, or about your home situation, or your life, or your church situation. And I feel God has something for us today, 3 things I want us to think about that I see from this passage, and the wisdom applied to us as a church. And the first one is, I've called Do Life in Circles. For Moses, pre-Jethro, he would have 2 million people potentially that come to him with a problem. So as they came, he wouldn't know who they were. He wouldn't know their background, he wouldn't know their situation, he would have to spend time to hear and understand. Jethro's advice broke the community down into smaller and smaller circles. You can imagine that leader of 10 going, "Oh, it's you again, Abel, is it? Are you having problems with that neighbour again? Are you doing what I told you last time?" And probably very quickly out of relationship, the problem could be solved. Whereas Moses would have to spend time hearing the whole context, the whole situation, weighing it before God. Doing life in circles is important, and as church we have 3 main circles that we do life in. We have the large circle. If we can click on, there we go. The large community, the gathered church. And I'm so excited that we are beginning to step back into gathering and being in this place. Maybe not all at once, but certainly heading in the right direction. And that is great because it brings diversity. It brings such a wealth of gifting in the large circle. It brings energy and life. If I'm feeling down, there'll be someone in that circle that will lift me up because of the amount of people there. And it has stability. If one person leaves the circle still is strong because of the number of people in it. But in a large circle, there are very shallow relationships. A little bit of maths for you now. This is my old maths teacher coming out. If you have a community of 120 people, for everyone to know each other, there has to be 7,140 ongoing relationships. There's a lot of relationships that would have to happen on a regular basis for everyone to know. So therefore, the relationships will have to be very shallow. But there is stability and all that life. So then we have the next circle, the medium circle, community, the medium community. We call them home groups. Those groups of 10, 12, 14 people, where suddenly we are more known. There is safety, there's stability still, and there's support. You can still have 1 or 2 leave that circle, and the circle will still be stable. In a group of 12, there's only 66 relationships now that need to happen to keep that going. But we still haven't got probably that level of honesty or openness that we probably need. And so we have a third circle. The small community, the prayer triplet, the accountability group, the 2s, 3s, 4s or 5s. I've really valued one-to-one walks over this last year with people because there is a depth of relationship there that you don't get in a larger or in a medium community. There's an honesty, there can be depth because with 3 people you have 3 relationships that need to happen. So therefore they can be deep. The trouble with the small circle is it's unstable. If one person leaves, the circle potentially collapses. And so therefore we need all 3 for us to flourish as a church. We need to do a bit more thinking as a church about how we can support and encourage people into prayer triplets or accountability groups. And just look out over the next few weeks as we try and see some ways that we can encourage you to be in those small communities, the medium and the large. But all I would say is get stuck into all 3 of them to see church succeeding. So that's my first thing of this application, do life in circles. My second one is that church is everyone. Before Jethro, everything revolved around Moses. If you had a problem, you went to Moses. If you needed a solution, you went to Moses. If you wanted a prayer request, you went to Moses. Everything revolved around him. After Jethro's advice, everything revolved around everybody. Because suddenly everybody got to play. Everybody got to be part of it. Everyone had a role. We work as a church where everyone is involved. If you take a meal round to someone in your home group, that's the church in action. If you pray for someone in your prayer triplet, that's the church praying. If you are looking out or give someone a phone call, that's the church connecting. We all get to play. See, my prayers are no more powerful or effective than yours. We all have a role to play in church. Everyone gets to play. And then this leads into my third point. Everyone must play. I love Jethro's advice. It's great, practical advice. But I did the maths. If we work on a community of 2 million people, which is what we think Israel was, that means Moses now has to go out and find 232,000 leaders or volunteers. Even if we do the more conservative approach of the day where they would just count the men, and we think about 600,000 went over the Red Sea, Moses will still need to find 79,000 leaders or volunteers. That's a lot of people that are suddenly needed. And everyone must play. For church to work, everyone must play. Everyone must serve and everyone must give for it to work. We cannot go back to a situation where one or two are serving the rest. We must work in a situation where everyone is doing their part and fulfilling their role in this community. I remember going to a wedding a few years ago, and the minister was doing a great job. He was there at the front running the service, and then we got to the first hymn. And he said, we're now going to sing this hymn. Let's stand. And then he ran to the side, sat down at the keyboard, and played through the song. Came back again, did the rest of the service, did the prayers, did the sermon. Thought he's a busy guy. After the service, we have a cup of tea and coffee. I'm in the queue. Who's serving the tea and coffee? It's the minister. At the end, as we're just leaving, who's packing everything away? It's the minister. We cannot have a situation where one or two are serving. We all need to get engaged. We all need to be serving. And who did Jethro encourage Moses to do? Find 3 things. He said, find people who are God-fearing, find people who are trustworthy, and find people who have servant hearts. I hope that's all of us. I hope all of us here or watching are God-fearing people, are trustworthy, and have a servant heart. And therefore, we all have a role to play. We all have something we can do. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but there's a difference between a serving and ministry, a calling. We can all serve. Serving is a bit like if you see a pile of washing up in your house, you don't stand there thinking, well, has God called me to do the washing up? Has he called me to spend the next 5 minutes doing that or not? I'm not quite sure. You just get stuck in and you do it. That's serving. Ministry is the things where maybe there's a bit more of a gifting and a bit more of an anointing from God. Worship, kids' work, preaching. And that's different. But we're all called to be servants in the house of the Lord. So let me finish this way. I love this phrase, all hands on deck. It comes from a naval context. Picture the scene on a boat, on an old boat. They're coming to a storm. The storm is hitting, the boat's starting to rock and be a bit, the sails are all over the place. And so what happens? The captain says, right, all hands on deck. Everybody up on the deck, grab this, do this, pull this, let's get through this storm. And I feel that really, at this moment, this is a bit of a call to us all hands on deck. And this is a call to all of us to come, to be ready to serve, to allow us as a church to do all that we want to do, to all that we want to achieve, all that we're called, all of our mission. I'm calling us all now to be on deck, to be ready to serve, to be ready to get engaged, to be ready to be engaged in the purposes of God. And spiritually, I'm doing that too, and I'm calling out to those that God's not even brought to us yet. Lord, bring them. Bring the people that we need here in this church right now. And I pray, Lord, that the right people, that you will rise up the right people within our congregation, but you'll also bring the right people in so that we can fulfill all that you have called us to do. And for each one of us, I just say to each one of us watching, let's get engaged. Let's get on deck. Let's start getting to serve and get ready to bless him. You guys want to come up? Great. And to serve him. Church is a wonderful thing. We all get to play, but we all must play our part as well. So I just pray that you know what God's calling you to do, and that you have the confidence and the boldness to step out and to serve him in all that he is asking you to be part of.